Hey, do you like Fire Emblem? Fire Emblem supports, maybe? Well, have you stumbled onto the right video? Today, I'd like to talk about some Fire Emblem supports in Path of Radiance that I find particularly funny, sad, heartwarming, and overall interesting. I'm starting with Path of Radiance since I finished it and I'm close to finishing Radiantdawn, so maybe I'll talk about the others in the future. Number 1. Mist and Rolf. For some background, Mist and Rolf are new additions to the front lines of the Grail mercenaries, who joined after feeling useless. Ike begrudgingly lets them join as they force themselves onto the battlefield. Mist is the younger sister of Ike and the daughter of Grail, and Rolf is the youngest sibling to Boyd and Oscar, who are established members of the mercenary group. What I like most about the support is how raw it gets. In the C rank, it starts off pretty soon after the first battle Mist and Rolf are in. They talk about how they're relieved to have made it out safe. While Mist is terrified and expresses the horror she's experienced, Rolf, by contrast, seems to be rather excited to be fighting, despite them both being adolescents fighting in a war. This justifiably worries Mist, who watches Rolf run off saying he's going to slay even more people. I think the beginning of the support is pretty strong. It hooks you by exploring a topic you'd think Nintendo would sweep under the rug, but here, Mist is able to act as the audience's voice as well as the voice of reason. But Rolf, upon initial viewing, can seem unwell, almost like he revels in bringing harm onto people, which is worrying to us, the audience, and noticeably to Mist as well. Or another way to view this, and which is later revealed, the true way Rolf is feeling, is that it's really a mask to convince himself what he's doing is right. But for now, let's move on. In the B rank, Mist approaches Rolf as he's training. She brings up the very real truth that they are children fighting in a war they don't belong in. Rolf dismisses this, claiming that she's scared and that he'll fight for her and he's a man now who'll slay their enemies and defend his people. My favorite part of this entire support chain is how Mist calls BS and is very blunt with Rolf, saying that it sounds like he's treating killing people the same as picking a flower or squishing a spider. She reminds him that these are people too, not just targets to shoot at. Rolf can't bear to listen anymore, and he lashes out, stating that he's protecting everyone, and he storms off. Again, I love how Mist tries to talk Rolf out of fighting. She's the older of the two, so she tries to put things into perspective for him. But it's very noticeable by this point that being involved in fights is a soft spot for Rolf, seeing as he's always been told to hide and wait for everyone in the Grail mercenaries to come home. He finally has some agency and doesn't want to give that up, because he, as a child, believes he has more power than he actually does, and he is afraid that his inaction will cost him someone he loves. These ideas are further explored in the A rank, where Mist tries to tell Rolf not to think every person they meet is going to be evil and out to get them. Rolf takes offense to this and sort of snaps. He very bluntly explains the terrible things he's seen. He even goes on to say, "We're not fighting targets. I know the difference. Targets don't squirm on the ground and gurgle in pain. Targets don't make the grass slippery with blood." And there's just something so impactful seeing a very young child such as Rolf saying something like that. I like how much it puts into perspective the horrors these kids have to face. Rolf, despite the trauma, wants to protect his family more than anything, so he continues to fight. He's scared of losing someone. He finally lets go of this tough guy act and starts crying. Mist goes to comfort him, apologizing because she had thought he had changed for the worse. I think this is one of the strongest supports in the game, so I figured I'd talk about it first. While I don't think Mist needs to apologize, her emotional intelligence shines here, because even though she probably wants to cry too, I believe she knows Rolf needs her to be strong. Number 2. Boyd and Titania. Okay, well, that was pretty morbid, but now onto a silly one. Boyd is a young member of the Grail mercenaries who's sort of a rival to Ike, as they are about the same in age, right? Titania, on the other hand, is the second in command of the Grail mercenaries, and has been a soldier for a while. At the beginning of this support, Titania catches Boyd not giving his all during training. Boyd is making excuses, while Titania continues to chew him out. She even tries to compliment him, telling him that he could even be better than her someday if he worked hard enough. This pretty much gives you the idea of what their dynamic is like. Titania is kind of like a mother figure or big sister type of friend who wants the best for her younger, more inexperienced troops, whereas Boyd is the somewhat lazy, overly confident teenager. In the B rank, Titania approaches Boyd again, which unsurprisingly startles him as he starts panicking. Titania tells him to take it easy because she's not planning to nag him anymore. He's been able to hold his own in many of the battles they've faced so far, so she congratulates him on improving. Boyd, who's apparently not used to this, is rather confused that she's complimenting him, and for some reason says out loud that her being nice because he finally did something right is a bad omen. Titania obviously takes offense to this as she simply walks away. This part of the support makes me realize how much of an airhead Boyd is. It's almost like all he's been doing all of his life is fighting and barely socializing with people his age or something like that. But regardless, it's pretty funny how socially awkward he is, and especially how Titania just doesn't bother to put up with it. In the A rank, this time Boyd approaches Titania. She makes a joke about how good he's been doing and how there's nothing she can critique. Boyd asks if there's anything she would want to have. He wanted to thank Titania for all the help she's given him. Titania is rather proud of him for offering, and Boyd continues to poke further, wondering if there's anything he can do for her. Titania politely declines, saying she believes he should spend his money on himself, and he deserves it. Unfortunately, Boyd pulls a Boyd and just blurbs what he's got in his mind, saying, "Don't you get it? I want to get you a gift." He then goes on to basically proclaim his love for her, describing how beautiful she is. Titania is very much taken aback by this as she tries to interject. However, Boyd continues. He then goes on to say one of the worst things he could possibly say in this exact situation. He, quote, "You're like a really nice mom or something." He then realizes what exactly he just said and tries to backtrack. Titania very plainly asks Boyd how old he thinks she is. Boyd continues to fumble and answers with, "Are you younger than my mother?" And what really gets me is how Titania simply closes her eyes, not knowing what to say. Because what do you say to that, right? And Boyd then darts off. This is one of the most memorable cutscenes simply because of the fact I think Boyd is the only person to unintentionally mom zone somebody. What's funnier is how they never speak of this moment again, which I like to imagine they both just had a silent agreement to forget this ever happened. Number 3, Jennifer and Shinon. I'm particularly fond of this one. Some supports are canon in Radiant Dawn and are referenced, but to my knowledge, unfortunately, this doesn't change too much of Shinon's behavior and his dialogue, even if you data transfer. So, TLDR, Shinon is a skilled but arrogant and rather mean-spirited officer of the Grail Mercenaries, who has had a pretty strong distaste for the Lagoose people. Januf is a Hawk Lagoose from the Phoenicians tribe, and doesn't have the highest opinion of Bjork. Bjork are humans, and humans is kind of a slur to call Bjork. Bjork is like the respectable term to call humans. So if you are a Lagoose and you call a Bjork a human, it's like you are very much telling people you don't like Bjork. Anyways, so it's really interesting to me that these two have a support together. This support takes place shortly after Shinon rejoins the Grail Mercenaries after the company had been passed down to Ike. Jennifer, who recently joined the ranks, spots him and starts questioning who he is. Shinon immediately starts ignoring him and telling him that he doesn't have, quote, time to waste on half-breeds. So we're already off to a pretty hostile start. Janif and he go back and forth, threatening each other as Shinon tries to get the last laugh, saying he's letting him go. You'd think they wouldn't speak much after that, but considering we have 2 whole support ranks after this, it really intrigued me seeing where this conflict will go. We cut to Shinon hurling some racist remarks towards Janif, which makes him angry. Shinon brings up Janif's line of work, how he's a bodyguard for the Phoenician king. Janif retorts with what he's heard about Grail, saying how he heard he was a traitor to Dayan. Shinon, who's known Grail for a while and obviously has a soft spot for him, takes offense to that and almost starts to fight with Janif. He surprisingly holds himself back. He holds his composure, believing that fighting wouldn't be worth it. Janif is and has been more confused and speculative rather than antagonistic to Shinon. He even goes on to ask why he fights, despite having no master or clan. See, Janif is under the belief that Bjork fight because they enjoy it. Shinon claims that he fights to live, like anyone else. Shinon goes on to respond to Janif's claim that humans make weapons to hunt for sport, saying that they make weapons to defend themselves from the Lagoos, or half-breeds, as he puts it. He then walks off, saying only nobles have an interest in hunting for sport. Janif has more questions, but is ignored. I really like this part. Their prejudices are plainly laid out in a very strong and believable way. I like how Janif is a lot more curious and pretty calm and mature, considering the constant antagonizing Shinon does to him. It allows them to have a believable back and forth, because Janif wants to understand Bjork, despite people like Shinon hating him and his people. You really get the sense that Janif is a lot wiser than he looks, and Shinon is very much a product of his environment, likely raised all of his life to hate Lagoos, to the point that he can't help but look down on someone that's just trying to understand him. In the A rank, to Shinon's displeasure, Janif approaches him, and Shinon, once again, hurls insults at him. Janif is almost ready to retaliate, but he stops himself, and even apologizes for assuming that all Bjork enjoy killing. This genuinely shocks Shinon, and now he's the one that starts asking questions. He starts by asking why he joined Ike if he feels that humans are so violent, and if it was his king who put him up to it. Janif responds, saying that he could have denied the king's school quest if he so pleased. The reason he follows Ike is that he saved a friend of his. He hopes to repay him, and he is quite fond of him. Shinon then goes on to vent about his disdain for Ike, feeling like he's only been handed things. Janif tells him that Ike can't decide his parentage, and Shinon actually does agree. However, he does say that he's going to hold on to that feeling because it's his own choice to believe in whatever he wants. He then stops talking about it because he still is clinging on to his prejudice. Janif reveals that he believes he was once the same as Shinon in his younger years. Despite looking like a young man, Janif is actually over 100 years old. Shinon suddenly seems to have gained a lot of respect for the Lagoos, or at least for Janif. He stops calling him a half-breed and starts talking to him normally. Janif leaves after telling Shinon that if he ever needs advice, he can always come to talk to him. Shinon then chases after him, trying to ask questions about his life. I adore this ending because you can see how Shinon grows into a better person after talking to Janif. He's someone who prides himself on skill. He looks up to Grail due to him not only being a great guy, but a peerless warrior. He hates Ike because he thinks he's a nepo baby who never had to work for his station and abilities, which is not true because he is very capable. He was handed the company from his father, but Ike is a very strong person, and through the grief of losing Grail, Shinon is obviously clouding his judgment, and Janif points that out. So now, meeting someone who he previously thought to be less than him, that same guy is talking to him as his equal. Shinon even recognizes that Janif likely has more experience than he does. He sees how Janif has given him empathy, kindness, and has sought to understand him despite all of the hate speech thrown at him. It completely changes his worldview. He grows to respect Janif. I really love the direction the writers took with this one. It shows me that they really understood these characters really well. Alright, well, that's the video. Thanks for stopping by and watching this. I'm planning to talk about more Fire Emblem supports and just FE content in general in the future. If you could, please comment below and tell me what you think about the video, the supports, what or who you'd like to see talked about next, and if you're a newcomer who might now have an interest in Fire Emblem, please let me know. Bye!